All right, it seems like that time, guys. Before we get started, I always like to get things kicked off. Everybody, just take a deep breath. Get centered. We're going to learn some stuff today. It's going to be awesome. Take one more deep breath. And now what we think we should do, because this always works to keep the audiovisual bugs at bay, let's have a round of applause for our AV team at the back. Yeah. They're going to keep things rolling. Thank you guys for coming today. It's going to be an exciting day of learning about enterprise applications of XR. And the first speaker we have today, David Burch here, is going to be speaking to us about his company, Arbor XR, and all the work they're doing to bring value to the industry. So David, come on up. Are you going to do it from there? Are you going to come up?
I thought I'd just hang out here, actually.
You can,
no,
hey, man.
Coming up.
All right. Awesome. Well, round of applause for David, please.
Yeah. Thank you. Awesome. Well, that's for sure the most rousing round of applause I'm going to get all day. Good to see everybody. Thank you, guys. My name is David Burch. Thank you for coming, and welcome to AWE. Is everybody having a wonderful time? Yeah. All right. It's about to go downhill just a little bit, but we'll pick that up. As it was said, my name is David Burch. I'm actually the sales director for Arbor XR. I will touch a little bit on what Arbor XR does, who we are, but primarily I want to talk to you today about the current state of the XR landscape. So often when we have these conversations or we have these ideas, it's, well, what's it going to be like in the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next even 2 months or 2 weeks? The great thing is that we actually have evidence that XR is here today, and we have ROI to prove it. So we'll talk a little bit about some real use cases, some companies that I think you'll find very interesting, what they're doing, what sort of results they're seeing. We'll go through some general stats that you can to internalize or take back to other XR champions within your organization. And we'll also talk a little bit about things you should consider as you build out an XR training or an XR platform. Does that sound good? It sounds good. All right. So as we know, training is here today. So we can talk about all sorts of things in the future, and they're all very exciting. But training at the enterprise, at the educational level, at the healthcare spaces, they are massive. They are rapidly growing. People continue to invest in these sorts of initiatives because the ROI is there, as we will discuss. And the reason for that is simple. With XR, with VR, with AR, you're able to build sophisticated simulations to really, actually practice dangerous situations, difficult situations that are expensive to simulate and then very difficult to actually replicate as well. You put on a goggle, you can do this as many times as you want to. The retention is there, as we will discuss. So one of the big things that people talk about, even though we know that this is incredibly valuable, is how do I actually measure the ROI? So I am going to give, I'm just a little disclaimer. I think we're all subject sometimes, myself included, to just stat overload. And so I just sort of become immune to them. But in reality, these are real life stats that affect all of us today, no matter what role you play in your XR environment, whether you're a champion or a creator, just an enthusiast, or you're a real decision maker at a huge company. I want you to really embrace these because it's very, very important. XR training reduces enterprise training time by up to 40%. That's just across the board, which is incredible. And I will say, our sources for this are listed below. They're incredibly small. I'm happy to answer any questions on those sources and actually send you some resources as well. This is all collated from our customers as well as third-party institutions. VR training in the classroom is up to 4 times faster than traditional classroom learning. 4 times. That's a big deal. I don't care if you're a little ED, like a K through 12 student, or you're an experienced professional in the classroom building up your skills. This is massive, 4 times. And it reduces the time to proficiency by up to 70% just across the board, regardless of the use case, regardless of the vertical, so to speak. So this is great. It increases engagement. So it's hello there. Oh, yeah. My microphone's... No, it's not the microphone's fault because we gave them a round of applause. It's my fault, I'm sure. But it increases engagement. So you increase engagement. Learners are 3.75 times more emotionally connected to the content. That seems a little strange to be emotionally connected to something. But when you put on that headset and you're immersed in a new experience, I don't care if you're a novice or you're a seasoned XR professional that's in games all the time, it still is transformative. You're emotionally invested to the content that you are experiencing. And you're focused, in fact, 4 times more focused than in a traditional learning environment, like a classroom, kind of like what you're doing with me right now. It's hard to stay focused. With VR, with AR, XR, it is. This leads to improved retention. What's the point of learning something if you don't retain it, if you can't recall it? There's very little point other than just to pass a quiz and move on to the next thing. With XR training, you're 16 times more likely to recall the information compared to traditional methods. 16 times. Again, this is a stat. We're inundated with stats. 16 times is huge. That's a large percentage. And as a result, you're nearly 300% more confident in actually applying that knowledge that you learned in your VR training. That knowledge, those skills. So not only do you're engaged, you're improving your retention, and you're applying that. Now, this seems strange to a lot of people sometimes, but it's actually very cost effective. It's cheaper to train this way than with a traditional method. What I mean by that, just think about it. Normally, you have to set up a very difficult scenario or bring in let's say a cadaver or a bulldozer or a plane or whatever it is that you're working on. Then you're going through a process. You have an instructor right over there, right next to you. The simulation or the work is done. You have to reset it. Lots of knobs have to be turned. Lots of things need to be done. With VR, it's a click. It's a click, you reset. You can do this anytime, anywhere. And so that's why it's reasons it's cost effective. In fact, with all in, when you're at scale, you're up to 70% more cost effective as opposed to traditional methods. So again, very, very exciting. It enhances safety. This is incredibly important. All this means nothing if in the real world it doesn't have an impact, which you sort of talked about that with the ability to retain and apply that information. Virtual reality training reduces time lost to injury by 43%. I don't care what you're doing, we all want everybody to be healthier. VR actually improves that, enables that. That's something that we can all get behind, no matter what we're doing. And 230% improvement in surgical performance. There's probably a dumb joke in here where, hey, you're less likely to get hurt, but if you are, at least the surgeon's 230 times better. I'm not gonna make that dumb joke. Just think of it in your heads. All right, so successful XR training programs. We've gone through some stats. Let's look at some real life work. So we're gonna look at UPS, which everybody knows who UPS is. We love them. Invista, you may not know who Invista is, but you most likely do know who Koch Industries, Koch Company is. They do just about everything, and Invista is a very large part of their manufacturing piece of their business. And we'll also look at Pfizer. Everybody knows Pfizer. Everybody loves Pfizer. So let's look at UPS. Let's start here first. So Mark Grobe, the head of immersive technology at UPS, he says it's no longer a question of can XR be done. Now the question is, why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you doing it? So what they did, and they've been doing this for a long time. Let me back up for just 2 seconds and say the use cases that we're going to talk about are all featured in our podcast. So Arbor XR does host a regular podcast called XR Industry Leaders. These are all taken from that. So if you're interested, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and listen in detail to all the stories. But what they can tell us about and what I can share with you is they have 12 unique VR experiences for driver safety and new driver training. So traditionally what they would do is they'd have a mentor-mentee. So it's one driver, one trainer in a truck. Very, that's not the most efficient way to do it. You're driving around all day. Now you can have one person in a VR headset in a classroom, at home, whatever. And the result is the reduced driver training time from 8 hours to 2 hours, which is a 75% reduction. 8 hours to 2 hours. Think of it this way. Again, we love stats. That could be, if you do it right, a full 4 days worth of training in one working day. Or if you want to get all 5 days in, that's starting on Monday, you're done before lunch on Tuesday. It's incredible. So UPS is saying, why aren't you doing it? They're absolutely justified in asking that question because they're proving that it works. They're doing this with millions of employees every single year, and they've been doing it that way for a while. All right, Invista. So Dane Laughlin, who's a leader at Invista, I mentioned before they do manufacturing. So when they have an error, not only is it hurts the bottom line, but it's potentially fatal. We're talking about massive pieces of equipment inside a warehouse being maneuvered by people that are being trained, all the way down to very particular, hands-on work. When you normally take 6 months to train somebody, and virtual reality can turn that time frame into several weeks, that's a tangible operational difference for businesses. So clearly that's significant. So I mentioned they use this for manufacturing training. The net result of this is the 50 to 60% reduction in training time from 6 months to several weeks. But it's not just for the hard skills. It's not just for driver training or airline work. It's also for pharmaceuticals and medical applications. So we all, again, know who Pfizer is. Nicholas Hockey says, don't be deterred the first time you try to bring a new technology or a concept. Consistently find ways to bring your ideas to the right people. That's very important for us to remember. We're all enthusiasts for XR, but not all of our colleagues are. It's our job to find the ones that are, present our ideas, and continue to move everything forward the way that it should. Because Pfizer has proven, as well as everybody else, that there's a great bottom line. Pfizer has implemented an entire VR architecture, which has reduced training time by 40%. And I like this last bit, speeding up onboarding and helping increase production of life-saving vaccines. So this is real important work. And Pfizer is doing it in large part because of their VR initiatives. Again, you can check all this out in our podcast, XR Industry Leaders. So now that we've been suitably impressed, hopefully, that this is actually worthwhile, how do we actually do it? How do we build an effective XR training program? Well, there's several things you need to consider. And Arbor XR, what we do is we actually are an MDM for XR devices. We work with over 2,000 companies globally. We work with 50 of the top 500 of the global companies, sort of an amalgamation. And then several of the Fortune 500, in fact, 2 of the top 5 within the Fortune 500 are active paying customers. Some of them we may have talked about, some of them we may not have. But what we've learned is that there's several things you need to consider, and we can help you through that. So one, select the right XR device for your use case or use cases. Find the right XR content. What's the point of having all this hardware and all this ROI that I want to prove if I have lousy content or I don't know where to find it? Focus the user experience. When I get all these things taken and put together and I've got it perfected, when I have my users put on the headset, can I make sure they're actually doing what I want them to do? Can I track them? Can I understand what's holding them up, where the wins are? And can I measure the return on that investment? Can I prove consistently this is working, or we need to make a tweak because I know that if we do that, X, Y, and Z will happen. I mentioned we are an MDM. Okay, I don't want to make this an Arbor XR commercial, but come on, that's why I'm here. It sort of is. We manage the devices. So no matter what sort of device you choose, you can effectively manage that in your Arbor XR platform. It's totally web-based. You can install content, update that remotely wherever it is your devices are, and you can configure that experience. So your device choice really does matter. It really does. The questions you need to ask yourself are, how easy is it going to be for me to set up and provision a multitude of devices? I'm not talking about 5 or 6, but I'm talking about dozens, hundreds, thousands. A handful is easy. When you get beyond just a handful, it becomes very difficult to manage it and prove it out. Do I need to make unique accounts for every single one of these devices? Do I need to do things like put them in developer mode? Are they going to slow me down? Is that going to help me expand it within my organization, or is it going to truncate and stagnate exactly what I want to accomplish? Am I going to be able to manage the firmware updates so that when I have the content that I've put together and I have everything working the way that I want it to work, am I able to hold off and slow down a firmware update so that I can keep things working the way that I want them to work, or is that going to break automatically? Regardless of the device, you need to be able to have the ability to manage those firmware updates. And is the device durable? Is it reliable? What's the battery life? How, can I drop this? Is this more for a manufacturing floor or an office space, in the penthouse? What sort of device, what sort of use case am I going to have? All those questions are very, very important. Device tracking. Do I have a centralized management hub where I can see exactly in the world where my devices are? Do I have the ability to group those devices? Do I have the ability to tag those devices with location or training type or whatever it is that I want to further justify and see that ROI? Do I have the ability to identify the status of the headset itself? Can I see the battery percentage? Can I see how hot, how cold it is? Can I see the storage situation? Can I push out content and know that it's successfully implemented? Or do I need to make a tweak? Again, I've already talked about location tracking. I need to know within a very precise, just a few meters, exactly where this device is located. And I also need to be able to make sure that if I have put a device in the wild, that only authorized users are able to access it. Are they going to be able to use my existing SSO authentication provider to access the content and the device itself? And if I do lose a headset, or if I've lost it, or if it's stolen, can I remotely wipe that? Can I also tie it into my existing enterprise Wi-Fi, utilizing my certs? That's a big deal. Can you do those things? And then when it comes to content considerations, how do I actually get that out to my devices? Do I have to sideload that? Can I do it over the air? Can I manage when when that's done? Am I limited to content? Can I do custom APKs, store-bought applications, videos, WebXR? What are my limitations? What can I not do? When I do need to update, is it easy? Is it difficult? What sort of problems am I going to see there at scale? Are there file size limitations to the content that I want to create and have my individuals consume? These are large experiences. We want to make sure that you're able to make those as large as they need to be so that they can be robust. Are there bandwidth problems when I'm pushing out or installing or provisioning headsets that I need to be aware of? How stable is my network? How big are these files? Again, we're talking about at scale, not just at 4 or 5. When it comes to XR content consideration continued, where do I find my content? Am I going to the store, or am I going to a curated menu where the top content creators in the world are giving me access to their content based on my vertical, based on my use case? Am I able to meet with them and have a good understanding of how to continue to build out content to further my XR initiatives internally? Do I have access to that? Once I get all that figured out, do I have the ability to control what my users experience when they put on this headset? I've invested time and energy into the headsets. I've invested time into the content. I've got that all in place. They're all over the world. Now somebody puts it on and they see a native menu and they can completely bypass everything you've worked so hard to make for them. With XR, with Arbor XR, you don't have that. And I just made it a commercial, I'm sorry. But you can lock down those headsets. You can create a curated menu with your branding or your company's branding. You can choose the applications that are available to your users and nothing else. Can I prevent tampering? Can I keep them inside this? All these questions need to be answered. And then can I measure that return on the investment? How often are my devices being used? What users are actually utilizing my devices? And what are they doing? I see they're using this application, but what are they getting stuck on? What are they interacting with? Do I have the ability to see in real time what they're doing? Literally just look into their headset from wherever I am in the world, regardless of which headset it is that they're using. How often is the content being used? How do I build my ROI story? I need to make sure that I have analytics to do that. So the natural question is, if I want to do all these things, can I use my current UEM? You certainly can try. You certainly can try. The fact is that they're phenomenal for tablets and smartphones, but our clients, so maybe the ones that I just listed, maybe the ones that we'll be talking to on a panel here at 1:45 today on the main stage, they may or may not be still utilizing their existing UEM for their tablets and smartphones, but they have absolutely realized that for their XR deployments, they need an MDM specifically designed for XR devices. So that's me. Thank you guys. We're at booth. I've got 6.5 minutes So let's do a little Q&A if you guys want to. And while I'm doing that, come see us at booth 400. The expo opens up tomorrow, I believe. We'll be at booth 400. As soon as you walk in, just turn to your right. So any questions? If so, the mic is there. It's hot. Feel free to ask.
Hi, what's the content management system like for both the producers of the trainings and the consumers of the trainings? Can producers of the trainings, does the web interface allow them to kind of edit and remix content that they've published? But also, you kind of talked about stopping firmware updates and possibly, for like DoD customers, for instance, complete air-gapped network, no internet access. How do those users kind of deal with downloading content and it's just in a black box in a cave down below the earth forever?
Yeah.
And can they remix that content? Can they kind of download that content and then remix it themselves again on their air-gapped network?
Okay. Yeah, those are really good questions. So, I'll try my best to answer them. So, the over-the-air, there does need to be an active network connection. So, if they're in a cave, they're not going to be able to receive that. What you can do is use a configuration package, or you can do that with a one-time connection, which can solve for that. So that could be a local install of that new content, which is good. If you're if you're a content creator, you can actually seamlessly deliver your custom APKs if you have a new build to your client via a secure pipe. So rather than actually delivering them an APK via Google Drive or some sort of USB stick, it can be done all just via the web, which is great, and it's totally secure. Again, the largest companies in the world use that, large content creators as well. And remixing content. RBrexStar is not necessarily a content creation platform. What it does is it allows content that is created on your behalf or that you create to be delivered and managed in the way that you deem most appropriate. Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. Good question, thank you. Yeah.
Well, it would have been easier if I asked the question from there, but yeah, thank you for all the data you provided.
Yeah.
The real life use cases that you explained and the statistics were phenomenal, but is there a way to, couple those statistics with the end results of, reducing the time with XR? Like with UPS, you said that the time to train new drivers were reduced by 75%,
yeah.
But is there a statistics to couple that with, they make exactly the same amount of, accidents with the regularly, trained people, drivers like that?
That's a really good question. So his thing is, hey, it's wonderful that you're more efficient, but in the real world, what's the benefit other than just getting there faster? We did talk about at the very beginning, reduced time, or reduced accidents, or time lost to accidents is down by 43% across the board with XR training. But I realize you probably want to go a little bit deeper than that. And frankly, I don't have that answer. I don't have that. So let's talk here in just a moment, because we do have some resources that I can share with you where we go into that a little bit deeper. So good question. Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
Thanks for the talk. I'll try and frame this as best as I can. First one's a bit more of a, try to maybe get a bit of your idea on this. You mentioned something about finding the right people in these organizations who are seeing the future for this. Because what we found, especially with the larger companies, is there's so many rungs up the ladder that most of these people don't see it. And then you've got one person who's a bit further down that sees it and tries to push it up, and it always gets shot down from the sort of, exec level management. How long do you see this being in terms of a timeline until we're seeing adoption at the exec level in these larger companies? And what do you think it will take to get there outside of the obvious headset costs, scalability costs, and those sort of variables?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I wish I had a crystal ball. I would say, obviously, I think we're getting there faster than we were just a couple of years ago. So there's some really good examples. So for instance, with UPS is an example of excellent executive leadership that grasped it from the very beginning and was given tremendous support. And as a result, it grew quickly to millions of headsets. You contrast that with an example that we're going to talk about today at 1:45, the Veterans Health Administration. They are big time into XR, and it started at the grassroots level. It started with just a few people in a siloed office. There's several hundred offices throughout the United States that are VA. It started with them, and then eventually they found other like-minded individuals in other offices that were, again, equally as siloed, and they sort of formed an alliance and created a groundswell, and it grew upwards. So there are positive examples of both. So it can be done, but I'm not here to say that it's easy, and they will tell you that it's hard. But they were persistent, and they built out some playbooks, and I don't want to give it all away, but they did some really creative things to make their dream a reality because they felt so strongly in it. I think the more that stories like that come out, I think the more devices become available. I think the more cost-effective, even a procurement stage, not just long-term, but even more cost-effective at the device level it becomes, which is, it's getting better and better all the time. Remember, it wasn't that long ago, everything had to be plugged in. You had to have a gaming laptop on a cart to do anything. Now you can fit it in your backpack, and it's easy. So we're getting there. I'd love to say it's tomorrow, because that would make my life a lot better. But we are getting there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And one more question. In terms of the product, how modular is the product for allowing companies to be able to customize the front end or the look and feel of the system for their purposes or for clients from like a white labeling perspective?
Yeah. We don't really do any sort of white labeling. Now, you do have the ability on some plans to remove some particular Arbor XR branding inside the headset itself. Really, the branding comes down to the users don't necessarily have to know that they're utilizing an MDM. We're out of time. We're out of time. Unbelievable.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.